let's analyze what we've done so far to our sculpt. So we started out with a model, a little bit fat in the face, but in the prime of his manhood. And then we looked for his bone structure. We went a little farther to find his bone structure. And then we added a whole bunch of details. And just really damaging his skin. And being quite careless about how we did this. You know, this is just all very rough and loose. And so in the last lecture I used this word post-processing. So now what we're looking to do is get in here and find ways that we can start to modify the skin and modify the work we've already done to make it look more naturalistic. So if you're working in clay, you've got a lot of tricks. You would simply melt the surface, or you'd run orange rind, or there's a whole bunch of things, plastic wrap, tin foil, anything to start to modify the texture. So how do you do that inside of ZBrush? So I'm going to create a new layer so that this is all stored in a new layer, and we're going to go into deformation, and I want to take a look at a couple of options. So polish is one of the options I want to look at. So I'm just going to drag it all the way to 100 so you can see what it does. And it's going to really just wipe out, just obliterate the surface, which is fine. I just want to show you that. We're not necessarily going to use it to that extent, but you don't have to use it to 100 either. You can go to something like 19, and it's a little bit of a different effect. Maybe you're getting the sense now, you know, it's quite powerful. So even setting this to 2 or 3 makes a difference. And so that's one of the reasons why you want to make sure you do this on a layer, because then no matter what, you can still dial that back. Alright, but that's not what we want. Polish crisp edge. Set that all the way to 100. That's a different type of form of smoothing. It's going to do a similar thing, but it is different. So you might use one or the other, and to be honest, I couldn't tell you when or where. It would depend. It would be like using a different size flame to melt. You know, there's a lot of variety there. Okay, some other things that you can do. Inflate. Deflate. I love that. I love this deflate. It's one of my favorite tools. Inflate balloon. What is this going to do? It's very time intensive operation, so you got to be very careful. Like, I'm holding my pin here in this place for quite a while, and it's taking a bit. So I'm going to inflate to 3. You know, and you can see, well, we had it at 3 for a little while. But it's real powerful. Now, the key element in this processing is that you need to add a little bit of the real world into it. So if I'm melting wax, then there's going to be a different effect for areas that are recessed, that are inside, versus those that are basically outside, like the zygomatic. So why don't we open up the masking palette as well, and I'm going to introduce you to mask by cavity. You have to make sure that when you mask by cavity, you set intensity up to 100 and then press mask by cavity. And you can see pretty clearly what it's doing. Anywhere that the form is turning in, you're getting a mask. Now you can blur that mask, you can sharpen that mask. There's a whole bunch of things you can do, but we're going to leave it at the default, and what I'm going to do is turn view mask off. That way I'm not looking at the mask, and I can still come in here and do things like set the polish. So I'm going to set it to, oh, I don't know, let's set it to 5. Now that's a different effect. And it's a different effect because those areas that are the crevices are not getting any of this. So they're being treated differently. And if we turn this layer on and off just so you can see what the difference is, it's pretty cool. So that's before. It looks mechanical. It looks like I ran the clay tubes brush over the surface. And now that looks nice. It's melted. There's something I can do with that. And what you want to be doing is practicing. You know, what parts are more successful. Like I'm a big fan of the weaving here in the masseter. I'm not sure about the weaving here in the temporalis. This is really nice underneath the eye, but this is a mess underneath his left eye, or well, for him it's the right. And then the top part, that looks okay, but then there's this line that drags across it. That's not okay. So cool, not so cool. This kind of looks like tree roots. The masseter is awesome. That's not so cool. And underneath the jaw, oh man, the lower lip, I mean, the lower lip is awesome. I love that. Looks fantastic. So you want to be looking at and experimenting and trying to find it, but ultimately the process is the same. So let's undo this. I'm undoing until I'm, there we go. There we go. Could have just deleted the mask too, but I wanted to undo right to that point. And let's see what other options there are. Let's make sure that view mask is, make sure the mask is still there. So it is. Let's go into inflate. I'm going to set inflate to, I'll set it to 5. Alright, went a little on the nuts side. Let's set it to -5. Okay, definitely not working, although that actually has its own interesting quality. Let's set it to 1. It's not behaving well with that mask, I don't think. You could try, say, inflating it once and then polishing it twice, or setting polish to 2 and see what that does. Make sure view mask is off, and that's kind of fun. It's actually, that makes this area underneath his eye look really nice. Really nice. So let's store this. Let me close geometry. And let's create another layer. But this time turn this guy off. Alright, now is my mask still on? View mask. No, it's all gone. So let's go mask by cavity again. And let's turn the view mask off. And in this case, let's try inflate balloon. Now inflate balloon generally tends to ignore masks, but I'm going to set it to 1. Does take a little bit of time. And then I'm going to use polish crisp edge, and I'm going to go a little bit on the extreme. I'm going to set it to 8. I know, living dangerously. We need to set it again and again. That's interesting, the way it's melting that. You can also control click to invert and start to do other things. Let's say set the inflate to -1, and let's go -2. I kind of like, nope. And let's polish that. Alright, let's just see how that levels up. And uh-oh, I have a problem. And this is a tough problem. But what I just did was not stored in any of these layers. Somehow or another, I was able to get in and start doing things in the deformation tab without being in record mode. And that's fine, because it's not fine. I understand why that's happening, but that's an issue, and it might happen to you. So if that happens, what I want you to do is store a morph target. So I'm going down here, store the morph, and then you have to turn record mode on for some layer. As soon as you turn record mode on, you lose all of that sculpting. It's gone, all of that adjustment. You can either redo it, or you simply go to the morph target and you say switch. You delete it, and then you drop out. You just go to the eye icon. If that was confusing, watch it a few times. But basically, I introduced you to something, the morph target, while introducing you to a problem, which is usually a recipe for disaster. So try to follow it step by step once if you run into that problem, and then let us know if we can help you sort that out. Otherwise, I've now got two different types of skin, and so I'm going to just look at them. Let's say this is the most recent. Shift S to drop that, and then let's turn that guy off and turn our other one on. And I don't know about you, but I like the newer one more. So this one's got some nice qualities, but then it's got some qualities I'm not happy with. Whereas the newer one, much more flesh-like. Much more. So maybe what we could do is blend this one in a little bit. So I'm going to set the one that I'm not sure about, I'm setting it to 0. And then I'm going to slowly increase that. So I'm going to go 0.25, 0.5, and 1. It doesn't blend very well. Let's set it to 2. It does some cool things, so I'll leave that up to you. But something to experiment with. If you're not happy with it, turn the eye icon, or set this all the way to 0, and then just X. And gets rid of it. Pretty straightforward. So now we've got what used to be a guy in the prime of his life being dropped down, zombified, and given some really gnarly texture. And in this case, we might create a new layer, and this might be time to go in with, say, the slash brush, /3. Symmetry is off, and make sure masking is off, so just Control, click, and drag. And you can just start to individuate this a little bit if you want. I'm pretty okay with the level of form that we got. I think it's pretty neat. Might just need to add some shadows, some highlights, I should say. So actually, that's what I need the most. So I'm going to lower my Z intensity for slash, and I'm adding some highlights in the eye. It's poly painting as well, so let's switch. I'm going to switch to Damien's standard brush just to make my life easier. Pressing Alt. And just want to hit a few places. Just like that. I got a little carried away. I'm just using Damien's standard brush, and I'm just, the texturing happens so much better once you've got this kind of foundation, right? This already just looks really nice. But there we go. A little bit more around the lip. In fact, I'm going to cut in. Yeah, there we go. And make sure the nose doesn't get too inflated. And maybe H polish brush to just kind of shape the nose a touch. Alright, and there we go. I think we've explored a lot of different avenues. Make sure you save it, and make sure that you are really looking at the bone structure. Now I know you're exploring ZBrush, you're trying to learn ZBrush, and there's a lot to learn inside of this, but there's a lot to do in terms of sculpting. The whole program is built around sculpting, so stay focused on the sculpting as well, and you will enjoy what you do so much better. So a quick recap. We used a move brush, standard brush. Okay, we used the dam standard brush. we used slash 3, we used trim dynamic to plane things. Okay, and then let's see, what else did we use? We didn't use too much else. Clay buildup, actually. How do I forget that? It's so, that was key. And then this all got us to a sculpting part, and then when we got into the post-processing, this is when we used mask by cavity, and we used deformation, we used inflate, and we used polish. And we also used layers. And you saw there at the very end, morph targets. So if you went through all of this, then these are all the things that you've now got experience with. And you've now got your own zombie head as well. So I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned, and good luck with your sculpting.